So good morning. It's always an honor to be here. I always have such a good time, and I just want you to know that the love that you all express to me, I send right back to you as much as I possibly can because it's so much energy. I can't like always match it. Notice I said not always match it. So in this theme of peace, the title of this talk is The Myth of Peace, The Eye of the Storm. And, you know, we often think about peace as the opposite of war. We think about peace as an answer to chaos. That if those circumstances could just stop, then we would experience peace. We would come to know it. As always, I would like to start with the Gospel according to Merriam-Webster. And the definition of peace, there are 5 components that Merriam-Webster talks about that are very much interrelated. A state of tranquility or quiet, such as a freedom from civil disturbance. Freedom from disquieting or oppressive thoughts or emotions. A harmony in personal relations. Yeah, it's worth chuckling about that one. A state or period of mutual concord between governments. You can laugh at that one too. Used interjectionally to ask for silence or calm, or as a greeting or farewell. And what's interesting is that if we were to consider, rather than avoiding the chaos of our lives, if we actually settled ourselves into the center of the chaos, that there we might experience peace. That the effort that we expend to avoid or to run away from or to make the chaos be anything other than it is. Because here's the bad news, often what we're listing as chaos is just life. It's just life created by a group of people on a planet where there is not harmony in personal relations. It's not chaos, it's just what happens when we don't pay attention. So maybe the question around peace is not just what is peace, but what is our unique relationship to God? And if there is this thing called peace, then where and what is it inside our relationship with God? Not as this other thing that happens as a separate kind of circumstance from that personal relationship. One of the things I'm always mindful of is just the name of the tradition, Islam. So it's derived from the word salam, which means peace. It also is defined as surrender. And when we talk about the tradition of Islam, we are talking about the peace that comes when one surrenders their life to the divine. That is actually the meaning of the word Islam and how it's interpreted in the practice of the tradition. So a question for you to consider as I continue with this talk is, where is your life surrendered to the divine and where isn't it? Where do you think you have control of everything? And there's not a relationship with the divine, that our mind is in divine mind, that we are not separated, that we are connected, that which the divine wants in, through, and for us is what we want for ourselves. So consider then that the first myth that I'd like to talk about is that when we talk about peace, I'd like to expand that to talk about the peace of God. And the myth is that the peace of God is not the same as the peace of man. What we seek for peace is different and distinct from what God is as peace. God is not and the divine is not a circumstance, a fleeting moment in time. It is a being, a presence, an understanding. And we are that as well, except when we forget that we are. When we talk about peace, it's usually more from the perspective of having life be pleasing to us in some kind of way. We think about lives that are tranquil and peaceful. We think about our lives being free from fear or tyranny or even terror, which is a waking reality today, not just in the United States, but around the world. We might think about those places over there where there's war or there's armed combat or there's some kind of fighting that we would want to see an end to because we don't want people over there to suffer. Never mind what we got going on here. We think about our society being free from corruption and malfeasance, less working only in the interest of a few, but more working in the interest for the many. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just that when we think about the peace of God, not just the existence of peace, then there is more that's available for us to consider, and certainly more available for us to access in our own lives and in our relationships to one another. So I want to read a little bit from the book of Philippians. And this is a letter that Paul writes to the church in Philippi. And basically at this particular time in history, so this is not the Christianity of today. This is the Christianity of a group of people who basically are considered outlaws. They are considered somewhat crazy, and in some instances, heretical, that they are working in the complete opposite of religious and spiritual standard understanding of the day. They're people who believe that this guy called Jesus is actually a Messiah, and they have decided to follow him no matter what the consequences. And so a lot of, they met in secret, they met in hiding. There was no kind of like overarching supremacy. They were afraid. They were a fledgling spiritual community. And at this time, Paul is actually in jail in Rome. And he writes this letter knowing that this fledgling community is going on and wants to try and encourage them to continue doing what they want to do, to continue believing. And he says, let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. That's a little bit different than the way in which we generally think about peace in our lives. Because if what we seek is not just the peace of the world or peace of man, but if we're seeking the peace of God, now we've got some checkpoints. So Are you known for being reasonable? Like known in the world for being reasonable? Do people around you say, now that is a reasonable person? Are you worry-free? For those of you listening to the recording, I just kind of extend my hands like, there it is. Are your prayers and requests made with thanksgiving? Have you ever experienced peace that has surpassed your own understanding of why peace was there in that moment? I have. I believe that all of us have had a moment where there was a peace that was present that surpassed the circumstances and surpassed our understanding. But it was just that flicker, and then it went away. Do you feel like your heart and your mind are protected by God? That there's nothing that you can't feel, that there's nothing that you can't think, that there's nothing that you cannot be that is absent of the divine. That would be the place where we would want to put our attention if we're seeking the peace of God. If we're only seeking the peace of man, then we can continue doing what we're doing and looking at peace as this external experience. But the peace of God is different than the peace of man. The second myth is that peace and or the peace of God is unsustainable. That we can have just a moment of that peace that surpasses all understanding. And we don't know how to have that be a regular experience, like an expected, anticipated way that our life can go and that the life around us could be. And if you've ever had that moment, which I think we all have, all you want is for that moment to keep going. You just want it to be the way that life is. But I would say is that we may not be focusing in the right direction in order to sustain the peace of God or to sustain peace even of itself. Another part of Paul's letter to this fledgling church, and I'm going to take a little license with it so I can make it a little bit more correct for 21st century New Thought thinking. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. So maybe if peace was not just our partners picking up their underwear, if peace was not just getting the seat you want on the jitney, if peace was a little bit more than did you get the bonus that you think you deserve versus what your company has the capacity to pay, if peace is even more than whether Jerusalem is the capital of Israel or Tel Aviv is. But if you focused on what's true that you know of, what's true in your life, what's honorable, not just about you, but in the world around you, what are the things that are honorable? What's just? Because, and in this time, with everything that's going on, there are still things that are pure. Where are they around you? Or where could you be the creator of any of these things? What is lovely that is around you? And another way to think about what's lovely, like in nature, what is holy around you? What's commendable in the world? What's excellent? What is worthy of praise that we didn't take the time to actually give praise to, but said, oh, that's a nice thing, but we didn't give any praise about it or for it? These are the things that we would need to focus on if we would want the peace of God to be in our lives, through our lives, and to have our lives be that. Not just for ourselves, but for the world. The last myth that I want to talk about is that peace will happen someday when other people get their stuff together. Because if it were just you, peace would happen right now. It would just flow across the planet like water, if it were just you. But if those other people could get their stuff together, then there would be peace. We are in a unique spiritual moment at this particular time. Not just a moment in human evolution, but in spiritual evolution. All of the qualities of life that we are focusing on and that we can focus on to have that experience of the peace of God are out of alignment in some way, or we're not necessarily tending to it, like gardeners, like tending to it, tending to truth, tending to purity, tending to joy, tending to what's commendable. We kind of expect, it's almost funny that we expect peace to be possible when we're not tending to the things that would engender peace. There's nothing honorable or commendable about sexual harassment, but we now have it present in a way where spiritually we can begin to do the necessary work to dig into the foundations of every tradition, including this one, and see where are there disparities. Are we teaching our children how to honor themselves, how to live lives that are commendable, that are worthy of praise, to live lives of truth and joy and purity? Because the women who have stepped forward are worthy of praise. And there's still work to do if we intend for life to be different for our sons and daughters, because this curse is on both the perpetrator as well as the victim. And we have to stop thinking in only a victim mentality, because an environment that engenders this is as toxic for the perpetrator as it is for the person who is receiving these unwanted advances. There's nothing excellent or praiseworthy about being on the brink of war or thinking that we might be. There's nothing praiseworthy about that. But to conclude, I find for myself that music is one of the ways that I'm able to center and focus on that which is important. So a piece of homework for you, if you are not familiar with the artist Rochelle Farrell. She is an amazing vocalist and sings a song called Peace on Earth. And one of the lyrics of that song is, how can we heal the wounds of the world when we cannot heal our own? Where does this peace on earth begin if not in the home? So this journey for peace, this journey for the peace of God, this journey for peace on earth starts with you. It starts with what you're attending to. It starts with looking to see where those places are that remain unhealed, those wounds that are open, that allow people to just kind of brush up against you, and all of a sudden you are like a torch on fire. There's work that we have to do individually, and there's work that we have to do collectively as a community. But part of that is corralling our thoughts, being mindful of where we are putting our attention, and putting our attention on those things that engender the peace of God. It's interesting to me that every time we meet here, at the end of every service, we sing a song, whether peace is the theme of the month or not, that says, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with who? With me. So every week, at least one time a week, for one moment, our speaking to the universe, our plea, if we offer that with thanks, at least one moment a week, we are giving an offering that says, out of my mouth, let there be peace. Not just for me, let there be peace on the entire planet. And God, let it begin with me. Strengthen me to do the work that I need to do so that I can be the channel, I can be the arbiter, I can be the pathway for this peace on earth. I pray that we all let it begin with all of us, because we have no more time to waste. God bless you, and thank you so much.